truth of their origin. However, since the mysterious unearthing of the ancient civilizations, one name has surfaced from later transcriptions. The name was Olmec. Who were these people called Olmec? Can we speculate that these people of the colossal heads were Asians who crossed the Bering Strait, or Siberian icemen who migrated from Europe? Jose Maria y Serrano, upon excavating one of the monolith heads in this region of San Andreas Tuxtla, published a short passage in the Bulletin of the Mexican Geographical Statistical Society, and I quote, "As a work of art, it is without exaggeration a magnificent sculpture. But what most amazes me was the type that it represents, a Ethiopian African. I conclude that there had doubtlessly been black Negroids in this region from the very earliest ages of the world." Unquote. In 1939, Dr. Matthew Sterling led a joint team from the National Geographic Society into the Gulf of Mexico to spearhead a major digging operation in Veracruz to unearth the monolithic heads. Sterling concluded, and I quote, "The features are bold and amazingly Negroid in character." Unquote. The archaeological cultural data overwhelmingly confirms the depiction of Negroid faces. Further archaeological evidence of the Negroid in ancient America is found in the Monte Alban culture, which seems to have begun at the end of Olmec culture. In Monte Alban, 140 Negroid-type figures have been discovered. Upon archaeological research, there is no logical denying of the Negroidness found in the art of the ancient Americas. Although there has been denial amongst historians, archaeologists have indeed confirmed at least 4 major facts. Number 1, the Olmecs date back to the Archaic period. Number 2, the Olmec civilization parallels the dynastic periods of Egypt. Number 3, the Olmecs were not Paleo-Siberians or evolving Neanderthals. And number 4, evidence points to the Olmecs being of African ancestry. Skeletons have also been unearthed in pre-Columbian layers in the valley of the Pecos River that flows through Texas and New Mexico and empties into the Rio Grande of the Gulf of Mexico. Professor Houghton, a physical anthropologist, concluded, and I quote, "The Pecos skull resembles most closely the cranial of Negroid groups coming from Africa, where Negroes commonly have some perceptible infusion of Hamitic blood." Unquote. The Pecos skull resembles most closely the cranial of Negroid groups coming from Africa, where Negroes commonly have some perceptible infusion of Hamitic blood. Unquote. Professor Houghton refers to Hamitic blood. Hamitic blood is the blood of the Negroid, since the Ham, Shemites, were the dark seed which were forbidden to interbreed with the Canaanites. The word Ham translates as black in biblical Aramaic. Finds like these, in addition to the Negroid-style heads, forces us to consider the parallel between ancient America and Africa. However, historians dismiss these similarities as mere coincidence. Archaeologists, on the other hand, conclude that the Olmecs who sculpted these monoliths have been shown to be absolute masters of realistic portraiture and did not arrive at the distinct Negroid features by accident. It is also noted that there could not possibly be a coincidence of stylization of a distinct people with facial features and characteristics which separates them from the features and characteristics of all other races on this planet. There can be no room for geographical coincidence that the very period that the Negroid appeared in Mexico, that was the same period when the first pyramid, mummies, and hieroglyphics began to appear in Mesoamerica as well. Is it a coincidence that the Teotihuacan head of pre-Columbian Mexico greatly resembles early Mandingo clay heads and Nigerian images? Many of the historians today have confirmed to the speculation of the Olmec monolith heads. They cannot explain the representation of the Negroid. Despite the coloration, the fullness of the lips, prognathism, tattoos, tribal markings, and tribal scarification, kinky hair, the broad nose, and the Egyptian-style military accessories, historians now speculate that the sculptures were not constructed by Negroid people, but perhaps by Asians. If this had indeed been the case, why would people erect such huge monuments of Negroid representation? Why would Asians build colossal monuments to portray the Negroid of Africa when they had their own gods and legendary heroes? So realistic are these representations of the Negroid that it is extremely difficult to suggest that these figures were constructed by anyone other than Negroids themselves. Were the Asians attempting to construct an Egyptian metropolis by erecting Negroid stone heads, pyramids, clay pottery, which is identical to the Egyptian and even the Nigerian art? How could the Asians arrive at the startling similarities between the Olmec civilization and the Egyptian civilization? Even more absurd than these claims is how the Asians built these monolith heads. It is interesting to note the similarities between the mysteries of the construction of the Olmec heads and the pyramids of Egypt, both Negroid civilizations. The historical professors' hypotheses are in fact denials of an ancient Negroid civilization in America, which predates all other ancient civilizations and cultures in America. No one has denied that the Olmec civilization is perhaps the oldest of America that stretches back into antiquity, nor is there any legitimate denial that the Olmec monoliths represent Negroid people. However, there is denial that the true indigenous people of America were Negroid. Research shows that the Olmecs did not mysteriously vanish as suggested by historians, but that the Olmecs migrated far north and mixed in with the 4th century Chinese missionaries under Buddhist monk Hu Shen, who traveled to what is now California and produced what Columbus mistakenly called Indian and the British called the Red Man. Other Olmecs migrated to Southeast America and established settlements. Research suggests that Olmecs mixed in with Negroid traders from Morocco, the Moors, thus becoming known as Washoe, and established governments and sovereign nations thousands of years prior to the arrival of the Europeans. These claims have thus been repudiated by historical circles who have gone beyond the call of duty to counteract the suggestion that the original Native American, in every sense of the word, were African, Negroid, Black, Egyptian, or Nubian people, and not red men living in huts and teepees. So, who were the Olmecs? Where did they come from and why? Why does the Olmec culture parallel Egyptian culture? Who are the black gods carved in the stone found in Mexico? Did the Olmecs simply vanish, or do they still exist today under various names like African American, Negro, Black, Mexican, Puerto Rican? Is there a cover-up governed by archaeological and historical circles to hide the present identity of Olmecs in order to protect the land that would otherwise technically and literally be owned by these indigenous people? We owe it to ourselves to unearth the largest find to date. This find is that of the very first Americans.